Good morning. It's Friday. I would say that on the board if we were at school, but that's okay. So, happy Friday. Okay. You guys know Miss Cavagnaro loves Fridays. So, in Gilly, hi, good morning. I see Reagan and Colin and Kyle. Okay. Now, remember, when I'm reading, the chat is just strictly for you to respond. Okay, it's just strictly for you to respond if I ask a question. It's just like being on the carpet. Okay, so we don't use the chat to just chit chat with our friends, while I'm reading. So, hey, Natalie. So, in the story, we know that Miss Ellis said it is simply out of her hands, and Gilly is going to have to go with her grandmother. Okay, we also know that Courtney is the one who reached out to her mother, Gilly's grandmother, due to the note that Gilly wrote her. Okay, and so we also know that Gilly's probably feeling pretty darn bad about that because she's realized staying with Trotter is not quite as bad as she thought it was going to be. I think she's actually grown to love her a little bit. All right. This chapter is called The Going. For dinner that night, Trotter fried chicken so crisp it would crackle when you bit it, and she beat the potatoes into creamy peaks with the electric mixer. She had made Mr. Randolph his favorite green beans with ham bits for Gilly and W.E. There was a fruit salad with baby marshmallows. The sweet, sour smell of cherry pie filled the kitchen where the four of them sat around the table without appetite for food or speech. Only William Ernest cried, big, silent tears catching in the corners of the frame of his glasses and then spilling down his cheeks. Mr. Randolph, smaller and thinner than ever, sat forward on his chair with a shy half smile on his face, which meant he was just about to say something, but he never quite got it out. Trotter was breathing as hard as if she had just climbed the stairs. She kept rearranging the serving dishes as though about to offer seconds. But since the 4 plates were still piled high, the gesture was useless. Gilly watched her and tried to decide how much Miss Ellis had told her. Did she know the Thanksgiving visitor was Gilly's grandmother? Did Trotter know? She hoped not, about the crazy letter. She still couldn't remember what she had said in that letter. She still couldn't remember anything. Had she said W.E. was retarded? Her mind blanked in self-defense. Oh, God, don't let Trotter know. I never meant to hurt them. I just wanted... What had she wanted? A home, but Trotter tried to give her that. Permanence? Trotter wanted to give her that as well. No, what she wanted was something Trotter had no power over. She wanted that it was dragging the phrase down, almost drowning it. To be real without any quotation marks, to belong and to possess, to be herself, to be the swan, to be the ugly duckling no longer. Capo rushes, her disguise thrown off. Cinderella with both slippers on her feet. Snow White beyond the dwarves. Gladriel Hopkins come into her own. So she is talking, Kyle, not going to have it. She is talking about how she just wants to be part of a family, right? She's comparing herself. She wants to be Cinderella. She wants to be Snow White. She just wants to be herself. But there was no be coming, only a going. If you all don't start eating this supper, I'm gonna. Trotter stopped, fishing around for a proper threat. She took a deep breath, jump up and down on the table, squawking like a 200-pound love-sick chicken. Really? William Ernest took off his glasses and wiped them on his pants to prepare for a better view. Mr. Randolph's fixed smile crumbled into a nervous titter. Gilly swallowed to clear her clogged up throat and took a large, noisy bite of her drumstick. So remember, Trotter prepared this whole big going away dinner for Gilly. Now that's more like it. Trotter patted her shiny face with the tail of her apron. This was supposed to be a party, not some kind of funeral. She turned to Mr. Randolph and half shouted, Gilly's folks are from Loudoun County, Mr. Randolph. Oh, that's a lovely, lovely county, Miss Gilly. Real Virginia horse county. You got horses, Gilly? I don't know, W.E. She found it hard to imagine the little pudgy lady on a horse sack, but who could tell? Can I see 'em? Sure. If I got 'em, you can see 'em. She caught a flicked warning from Trotter over the boy's head, but Gilly ignored it. It's not as if I'm going to Hong Kong. Hell, you can just hop on a bus and come see me anytime. Trotter was shaking her head. She had to put her hand on W.E.'s shoulders. When folks leave, William Ernest, honey, they got to have a chance to settle in and get used to things. Sometimes it's best not to go visiting right away. So Trotter's saying when Gilly leaves, we're going to have to let her go and not visit her for a little bit. If you mean never, Trotter, say so. Is that it? Will I ever see the three of you again? Are you going to stand by and let them rip me out and fold me up and fly me away? Leave me a string? Trotter, a thread at least. Damn it, she'd tie her own. And that's what Gilly was thinking. Else. She looked at Trotter, but Trotter was so busy making the meat platter in the salad bowl switch places that the expression was wasted. After supper, Gilly did her homework, knowing it was useless that Miss Harris would never see the neat figures row on row. That proved that Gilly Hopkins had met and mastered the metric system. When she finished, she thought briefly of calling Agnes, but what would she say? Goodbye, when she'd never really even said hello? Poor Agnes, what would become of her? Would she stomp herself angrily through the floor, or would someone's kisses turn her magically into a princess? Alas, Agnes, the world is woefully short on frog smoochers. No, she'd call her, but maybe someday she'd write. William Ernest walked Mr. Randolph home and returned carrying the Oxford Book of English Verse for Gilly, a farewell present from Mr. Randolph. Remember when they made Gilly read that book and Gilly thought that they were doing it to make a fool of her? You guys remember that? Gilly, honey, do you know what kind of present that is? Gilly could guess. Like he tore off a piece of himself and gave it to you. Gilly ran a finger over the wrinkled brown leather, which could have almost been a piece of Mr. Randolph, but the observation seemed too raw. She kept it to herself. She waited for Trotter to puff up the stairs to take W.E. to bed before she began to look for the poem. So this is the poem. You can see that it's in italics. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life star, hath had elsewhere a setting and cometh from afar. Not entire forgetfulness, and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God, who is our home. She didn't understand it any more than she had the first time. If birth was a sleep and forgetting, then what was death? But she didn't really care. It was the sound she loved, the sounds that turned and fell into wonder. And not in utter nakedness. Who would have thought those 5 words could fall into such a pattern of light? And her favorite, but trailing clouds of glory do we come, was all the was all the L's that it did for the mental picture that streaked comet-like across the unfocused lens of her mind from God, who is our home. And this is that book that Mr. Randolph made her read. And she never really understood it. She was just the only one who was able to read. Because remember, the other ones were a little bit illiterate. So she's reading it now, and she's just trying to kind of decipher what those words meant. She awoke in the night trying to remember the dream that had awakened her. It was a sad one. Or why did her heart feel like a lump of poorly mashed potatoes? It was something about Courtney. Courtney coming to get her, and then, having seen her, turning away, sorrowing. Never, never, never. But the voice was Trotter's. She began to cry softly into her pillow, not knowing why or for whom. Maybe for all the craziness she had tried so hard to imagine and was never quite able to. And then Trotter was beside her, making the bed springs screech at the burden of her body. She leaned over, her hair loose from its daytime knot, falling across Gilly's own hair. You okay, baby? Gilly turned to face her, this mountain smelling of Johnson's baby powder and perspiration. In the dark, she could hardly make out the lines of Trotter's face. Yeah, she sniffled, I'm okay. Trotter took the hem off the striped pajama top and gently wiped Gilly's eyes and nose. I ain't supposed to let on how I feel. I ain't got no blood claim on you, and the Lord in heaven knows I want you to have a good life with your own people. But her huge voice broke up into squeaky little pieces. But it's killing me to see you go. The whole mammoth body began to shake with great giant sobs. Gilly sat up and put her arms as far as they could go around Trotter. I'm not going to go, she cried. They can't make me. Trotter quieted her at once. No, baby, you gotta go. Lord, forgive me for making it harder on you. I'll come back and I'll see you all the time. Trotter stuck her big warm hand under Gilly's pajama top and rubbed her back, the way Gilly had often seen her rub W.E.'s back. No, Gilly baby, it don't work like that. Like I tried to tell you at supper, once the tugboat takes you to the ocean liner, you got to get all the way on board. Can't straddle both decks. Okay. So that's a metaphor, right? She's comparing Gilly leaving to a tugboat taking her out to the ocean liner and saying she has to get on board. She can't stay on the tugboat and the ship. She's got to move to the ship. So that's a metaphor for her saying that she has to leave Trotter's house and she's got to go live with her grandmother. But I could, said Gilly. The big hand paused in its healing journey around and sat up and down her back, then began again as Trotter said softly, don't make this harder for us, baby. Perhaps Gilly should have protested further, but instead she gave herself over to the rhythmic stroking under whose comfort she wished she could curl up her whole body like a tiny sightless kitten and forget about the whole rest of the stinking world. She could almost forget, lying there in silence, letting the soothing warmth of the big hand erase all the aching. At last, overcome with drowsiness, she slid down into bed. Trotter pulled the covers up around Gilly's chin and patted them and her. You make me proud, you hear? Okay, she murmured and was asleep. That is the end of that chapter, not the book. Okay. We are still going to see what happens. I am going to send you a Canvas message with a Zoom conference link. Okay. If you guys have any way of getting this link to Lynette, Marquise, Jesse, Brody, Emma, these are people I haven't seen yet. So when I send you the link, if you have their phone number or I don't know, social media, whatever y'all use, try to get that link to them, okay? All right, I will see you in a minute. Check your Canvas.